Hi, I'm Erica and I live off-grid in Canada with my husband and 2 kids. And today I'm going to show you the easiest way to render fat. I'm doing pork fat today, but I've also used the same method for beef fat and bison fat. I use lard in my home for cooking, baking, and skincare. I use it to make a luscious, I call it tallow bomb because I used to make it with tallow, but now I make it with lard. You can make it with both. I have that recipe on my website, but it's such a useful and healthy thing to have in your kitchen. In our home, we prioritize making things as healthy as possible, so that means making a lot of things from scratch, and especially when we're trying to prioritize really healthy fats, making our own lard. And real quick, you do not need a meat grinder to do this. I'm using one, but you can totally do it without it. So we very often purchase whole pigs and butcher them ourselves. Even in the past, when we weren't doing that, I would seek out pig fat from local farms with high quality grass-fed pigs because I know that the fat from those pigs is so much healthier than the fat from unhealthy pigs. So I would still do this when I could. Get the fat, and it's super easy. By the way, I'm setting up my meat grinder. You don't need a meat grinder. I prefer it because it breaks the fat into, quite small pieces. But you really don't need to do that. You can just cut them into chunks and then slowly over low heat cook the fat until it renders out and you'll be left with pork cracklins. I have a blog post all about this process. I will link that below. We are using a crock pot, but you can definitely just use a regular pot on the stove and simmer it over low heat for a few hours, and that will do the job too. When we butcher the pigs, we just separate the fat, put it into freezer bags and freeze it, and take care of rendering it on another day. I did a video all about grinding our own ground meat as well. And I mentioned in that video that we used to wait a long time to grind the scrap meat. And same thing with the lard. We used to wait a long time. We just kind of procrastinated and put it off. And that made the process so much harder because then you have these freezer burnt bits on the edges that you had to trim off all these bags, and it was just a really stupid waste of time. So I now will get to this within a couple of weeks after butchering for sure, because I don't want to be dealing with freezer burn and kind of picking through and looking all around the outside of these giant chunks of meat or fat that I am pulling out of these freezer bags. I heard once on a podcast a couple of women talking about the concept of choosing your hard, about how if there's something that's hard, the opposite thing is probably just hard in a different way. For example, it's hard for me to get all this stuff out and grind the meat or grind the fat and then render it. That's hard work, right? But it's also hard to put it off and wait because I'm adding a whole bunch of extra time and effort into the process. Same for dishes. It's hard work, it's effort to do the dishes every day, to maintain a clean kitchen or a clean home, or do the laundry, or maintain an organized entryway, or whatever it is. But it's also hard, on the flip side, to live with a dirty kitchen, live with a disorganized entryway, live with piles of dirty laundry. So really, either way, you're choosing something hard. So which way would you actually prefer it? And the preferred one for me is usually the one that, yes, takes a little bit of upfront effort, but actually makes my life way easier in so many ways. When it comes to cooking from scratch, a lot of people would say, oh, that's hard or it takes too much time. But it's also hard to deal with health issues now and in the future. And I would rather put in the effort now to source quality ingredients, to cook things from scratch, so that we don't have a hard life health-wise for our entire lives. Lard is supposed to be shelf stable, but I'm just taking it an extra step to ensure that it lasts. So I'm sterilizing a couple of jars and canning lids, and I will pour the hot lard into the jars and tighten up the lids right away, and then they should seal and stay good even longer. We use the lard mainly for cooking in our cast iron skillets, just for adding it to the pan before cooking. And if you are someone who likes to bake a lot of pies, something that you could do instead of storing this in jars, this is a tip from my really smart mother-in-law, by the way. She will cool it somehow. I can't remember if it's in a 9x13 or just in a bowl, so that it solidifies, and then she will measure out the exact amount that she likes to use in pie crusts and wrap it in parchment paper in those amounts so that she can just easily pull out a little brick of lard and use it in her baking. So after all the lard is strained, we are left with a bunch of pork cracklings. And we salt these and we eat a few of them while they are warm and crispy, but the rest I actually package up. I make just little bags of them that I will, throughout the months ahead, throw into soups or casseroles, wherever, little bits of things like that can just blend in, because these still have nutrients and we don't want to waste them. So I keep that in mind in my cooking going forward. Once the lard is strained into my sterilized jars, I tighten the lids on them and then just put them aside and let them to cool overnight. And I heard that glorious popping sound to let me know that they were sealing throughout that evening. And then the next day, I'm just taking a Sharpie and writing what is in these jars and the year for future reference. Thank you so much for watching. Again, I'll leave the detailed blog post down below for you to reference. And I make a new video every week about our intentional life off the grid, including cooking, homesteading, homemaking, all that stuff. So I'd love if you'd subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.